Hey everybody, Mikey Killer 44 here. This story's short as hell. Hold on a second. You seen the title. We're gonna do some creepypastas, more creepypasta stories. Hope you enjoy them. If you do, hit the like button, subscribe. I don't know why I just did that. Hopefully you can hear the music. Russian Doll, written by the Dead Cannery. Okay. It's getting freaky already in here. It's a long story. Literally, yep. Here we go. Russian Doll, written by the Dead Cannery. You really do like my collection, don't you? Those words were among the most terrifying I had heard in my entire life. Not because of the words themselves, but because of the man saying them. Anyway. The man who had me tied up to his living room of his freaky old house, who sat calmly and collected on a couch that had last been reupholstered probably a century before I was born. Before I get too far, you can probably guess I'm still around to tell this story. Well, yeah, sorry to break the suspense here, but that's not the point. This is not a story I'm telling proudly, because the reason I was in this house was to steal things. I'm not normally a thief by trade. I'm just a guy who ran into financial problems and needed money. I was out of work for 6 months, and my bills were racking up, and it looked like no one in the world wanted to hire me. Yeah, I gotta charge my phone. It has to be on charge. I'm sorry, it has to be. We're just gonna, die out in a second. I would have never considered robbing anyone, except, he started it. My neighborhood would never be mistaken for upper class, but it's not crime-ridden either. Got a fart. The house a couple of doors down has a guy who I'm sure has done something sometime for assault. The way he screams at people who mow their lawn while he's sleeping, and the one neighborhood outdoor cats gets into scraps with my neighbor's dog from time to time. But other than that, it's pretty quiet. The hovel at the end of the street, though, has always been a little off-putting. The owner was rarely seen, but when he did, he was always gruff, unpleasant, and kept to himself. Thing is, though, his colonial had peeling paint, and his lawn was overgrown and nearly impassable. He had an immaculate 1930s airflow. I recognized a car from that LA Nearer game that came out a few years ago. I always liked the look of it and wish I could have one of my own someday, if I ever had the money to buy a classic car. But that car was so out of place compared to the rest of the house that it struck me, and a quite few other people in the neighborhood, as odd. We all just assumed he was some lonely old misser who liked to spend time on his car and ignore the rest of the world. The thing that changed my mind was when he almost ran me over with it. And I don't mean I just stepped out into the road at the wrong time and didn't see him. The a-hole actually tried to kill me and missed. There was no way he didn't see me. He was pulling out of his driveway to go who knows where, and when I went across the street on my way back home from the convenience store, As I got in the middle of the road, he hit the accelerator, and I had to drive for the gutter before. I had to dive for the gutter before he hit me. Aww. He ran over my bag of stuff. I lost an energy drink and a bag of chips, but thankfully that was all I lost. I started shouting at him as he went off. I was hoping another neighbor would have seen it and reported him to the cops. But unfortunately, since it was the middle of the day, most of them are probably at work. I went home and called the cops myself, and while they said that I could come down and file a report if there was no witnesses, it would be hard to press charges. I could tell the cop was sympathetic. I'm pretty sure he lived nearby and knew exactly who I was talking about. But there just wasn't much that could be done. It just made me seethe more. I wanted to teach him a lesson of some kind. Get back at him. The best I could think to do, though, was write an angry note. I was going to put it in his mailbox or front door, or maybe shove it right in his face if I actually got to see him. It was early night when I went to go drop it off. Lights were on in everyone's houses, and even with curtains drawn, you could see the warm glow of lamps around the edges. But his house, no light came from it at all. I stumbled through his front lawn to his porch, about to hang the note. When I looked at his front window, I don't know what kind of curtains they were, but they were jet black, and no light came around them at all. It seemed like it was too early at night for someone... Hey! Sorry. It seemed like it was too early at night for someone to be asleep, but it could have been the case. And then I noticed the window itself was broken in one corner. I could reach in and touch it. I did. It was cold and heavy. I tried to move it one side. I could just barely see into the room, but couldn't tell if it was a living room of some kind. I pulled out my phone, shook it to turn on the flashlight, and pointed in it. I don't like the expression my jaw dropped, but yeah, my jaw dropped. I do not like expressions. Weird. Despite the overall mustiness and ill-kept look of the room, the stuff in it looked priceless. There was a vase in one corner that was almost as big as I was, some kind of marble statue in another corner, old paintings hanging up on the worn wallpaper, and a fireplace mantel covered with knickknacks. The guy was loaded. I would have bet anything in that room could have been auctioned for a fortune. I suddenly had a better idea of exacting my revenge. Screw the note. If the rich old bastard felt like running people over with his car and got away with it, I was going to make off with something of his. He'd probably never even miss it. I wanted to see if he was home. I first tried the doorbell, but the button was hanging to one side and didn't look like I could have rung it if I wanted to. I tried knocking at the door several times, even banging on it once or twice, but I never got an answer. I looked around for cameras, but didn't see any of those either. A little weird considering what he owned, but I guess he thought his house and attitude alone would have been enough to deter people. Satisfied, I reached through the crack in the window to see if I could pry it open. I couldn't quite reach. I found a rock that allowed me to bash out enough the window to try it. I opened it and climbed through into the living room. I turned on my cell phone light again, covering most of it with my hand to keep it from shining around too much. Most of the stuff in the room would have been too big to carry off with me, so I went over to the mantel to see what was up there. There was a clock that looked like it was solid gold. It was heavy enough to be, but it probably had enough in it to purchase half the block. A candlestick set was next, but it was too wide to hide anywhere. Next was a little jewelry or snuff box that didn't have anything in it, but were probably silver. So many things I could have taken. But there was one thing on the mantel that was strange. It was the only thing that was old, but didn't look like it was worth anything. It was one of those Russian dolls. The ones that pop open and have more inside. I wish I could remember the real name, but there was nothing spectacular about it. Just a painted doll with a man wearing a fur hat on the outside. It reminded me of a nutcracker, only in painted form. I couldn't decide what to take, but while I thought about it, I glanced around the rest of the room. It was then the paintings caught my eye. The guy who lived here was definitely older, probably in his early 60s, graying hair and beard. The guy in the paintings looked awfully similar to him, but with much younger features. One was a portrait with what looked like a Napoleon outfit. One showed him in something from the Revolutionary War, and yet another one of a much younger man standing on the Globe Theatre stage. I recognized it from an old class project I did about Shakespeare. The paint on that one was flaking pretty bad. It made me think it was either a poor job or it was old. Genuinely old. But it was the same guy in all the pictures, unless it was some weird vanity project. Either there was a lot of very similar relatives, or something really strange was going on. I turned around to go back to the mantel. In front of me was another face. An older man, probably in his early 60s. I thought for a minute that he looked really happy. But then something hit me in the face. It smelled strange. But I didn't know much after that. When I woke back up, the living room lights were on, and I was tied to a chair that hadn't been in the room before, and the man was sitting on the couch, hands folded, dressed in a smoking jacket. And the first thing out of his mouth was that question. I was petrified. Trespassing and trying to steal something, sure. I could have gotten shot and killed if he was armed. He could have me arrested, but the way he was acting told me he hadn't called the cops. There was something deeply wrong with this guy. I gulped. It's very old, I guess. Yes, it is. He looked at the paintings and then the mantle. You know, I found over the time that the easiest way to judge someone is not by their outside, but what they hide away. Look like the little doll over there. He didn't move from the couch, but I had the strangest feeling that he moved closer to me. He stared right into my eyes. I could tell your house is fairly good looking on the outside, but inside you're struggling. Needing more money, more hope, more meaning, and even more than that. In your house is you. Peel that away, and there's resentment, fear, anger, and revenge. This time he stood up and smiled again. We all have these things we don't want anyone to see. I'm no different. He went to another room, and I heard him digging around for something. You're not the first person to break into my house. You won't be the last. I didn't try to wait it out. I fought the ties on my hands and ankles, but everything was too tight and I couldn't do anything with them. I scooted the chair backwards on the rugs, scooting towards the mantel, hoping something on there would help. There was nothing I could reach. With my tiptoes, I tried to lift myself forward and stand up just a little bit. As I did, the chair creaked, and I felt it shift, like everything else in here. It was old, and even if it worth good money, it wasn't worth my life. I rocked forward and then pushed back with all my might. I hit the floor hard, but the chair flew apart. I was still tied to parts of the chair, but I could move. I looked to the window to escape, but I saw while I was out, he had put some kind of bar against the heavy black curtains and padlocked it. I would have had to undo the lock to free myself. I heard it coming from the other room, and I knew I had to try and defend myself. I grabbed the candlestick, and in the process, I knocked the Russian doll on the floor. I know them Russian dolls. Yeah, them things that you open up, and another one comes out, and you open that one, another one, yeah. The man came back in. He was carrying a knife, but it was strange. The blade was crooked and bent, like a snake. His eyes were wide, but I realized he wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the doll. I don't know why, but I reached down and grabbed it. In that moment, his wife I looked turned to sheer anger, and he lunged at me. What just happened? What the frick just happened? What the hell? Sorry about that. I pulled off the top of the doll with a pop, and what happened next still haunts me. When I pulled the top, the man's top half just seemed to peel away. but his skin just vanished. Underneath was something not human. It was wizened and pale and drawn, and its eyes stared at me. Where eyes should have been were two blue dots, like stars, like horns came from the top of its skull. It roared an inhuman roar. I pulled another layer from the doll. The monster became little more than slimy, rotted muscle hanging from the bone. I took another step forward, but stumbled and fell. I pulled once more. The skeleton and sinew crawled towards me, unable to do much more but move at a slow pace. I pulled the final layer. In the midst of a pile of organs lay a large gray stone in the shape of a heart. Even as stone, it beat and twitched. Inside the final layer of the doll was a small jar, and inside there lay a small mummified heart. I dropped the jar on the floor and crushed it under my foot. The stone heart stopped beating. I didn't actually steal anything from the house. I left it all there because I don't want to touch anything more than that. That anything more that the creature touched. But as luck would have it, I did manage to find a job only a week or so later. My life had improved a lot since then. I didn't actually steal. Wait a minute, where was I? I know that the house at the end of the street has finally been razed, and a new, much nicer home is in its spot. I don't know what happened to its contents, or what remained of the man inside. But if he was something who had beaten to death itself, and had lived through centuries as that thing, I'm glad he's gone. If living like that is what immortality offers, I did him a favor. Well, that was the first story. That was called The Russian Doll. Credit goes to the Dead Cannery. And, Chilling Tales for the Dark Nights. Yeah. Let's see, next. Someone keeps coming on my live stream and going off. That was a long story. What's he doing now? Let's search one up. We're back. Here we go. Here we go, guys. This next one is a very common creepypasta known as Jeff the Killer. After weeks of unexplained murders, the ominous unknown killer is still on the rise.
After little evidence has been found, a young boy states that he survived one of the killer's attacks and bravely tells his story. I had a bad dream and I woke up in the middle of the night, says the boy. I saw that for some reason the window was open, even though I remembered it being closed before I went to bed. I got up and shut it once more. Afterwards, I simply crawled under my covers and tried to get back to sleep. That's when I had a strange feeling like someone was watching me. I looked up and nearly jumped out of my bed. There, in a little ray of light, illuminating from between my curtains, were a pair of two eyes. These weren't regular eyes. They were dark, ominous eyes. They were bordered in black and just plain out terrified me. That's when I saw his mouth, a long, horrendous smile that made every hair on my body stand up. The figure stood there, watching me. Finally, after what seemed like forever, he said, a simple phrase, but said in a way only a madman could speak. He said, "Go to sleep." I let out a scream. That's what sent him at me. He pulled up a knife, aiming at my heart. He jumped on top of my bed. I fought him back. I kicked, I punched, I rolled around, trying to knock him off me. That's when my dad busted in. The man threw the knife. He went into my dad's shoulder. The man probably would have finished him off. If one of the neighbors hadn't alerted the police. They drove into the parking lot and ran towards the door. The man turned and ran down the hallway. I heard a smash, like glass breaking. As I came out of my room, I saw the window that was pointing towards the back of the house was broken. I looked out to see if he vanished into the distance. I can tell you one thing. I will never forget that face. Those cold, evil eyes, and that psychotic smile. They will never leave my head. Jeff and his police are still on the look for this man. If you see anyone that fits the description in this story, please contact your local police department. Yeah, these are all fake stories. Jeff the Killer's fake, Slender Man's fake, they're all fake. Police are still on the look for this man. Jeff and his family had just moved into a new neighborhood. His dad had gotten a promotion at work, and they thought it would be best to live in one of those fancy neighborhoods. Jeff and his brother Lou couldn't complain, though. A new, better house. What was not to love? As they were getting unpacked, one of their neighbors came by. "Hello," she said. "I'm Barbara." "It's always Barbara. I swear it's always Barbara. I live across the street from you." "Well, I just wanted to introduce myself and to introduce my son." She turns around and calls her son over. "Billy, these are our new neighbors." Billy said hi and ran back to play in his yard. "Well," said Jeff's mom, "I'm Margaret, and this is my husband Peter, and my two sons Jeff and Lou." They each introduced themselves, and then Barbara invited them to her son's birthday. Jeff and his brother were about to object when their mother said that they would love to. When Jeff and his family are done packing, Jeff went up to his mom. "Mom, why would you invite us to some kid's party? If you haven't noticed, I'm not some dumb kid." "Jeff," said his mother, "we just moved here. We should show that we want to spend time with our neighbors. Now we're going to that party, and that's final." Jeff started to talk, but stopped himself, knowing that he couldn't do anything. Whenever his mom said something, it was final. He walked up to his room and plopped down on his bed. He sat there looking at his ceiling when suddenly he got a weird feeling. Not so much pain, but a weird feeling. Where was I? Where? He dismissed it as just some random feeling. He heard his mother call him down to get his stuff, and he walked down to get it. The next day, Jeff walked down the stairs to get breakfast and got ready for school. As he sat there eating his breakfast, he once again got that feeling. This time it was stronger. It gave him a slight tugging pain, but once again he dismissed it. As he and Lou finished breakfast, they would walk down to the bus stop. They sat there waiting for the bus, and then all of a sudden, some kid on a skateboard jumped over them, only inches above their laps. They both jumped back in surprise. "Hey, what the hell?" The kid landed and turned back to them. He kicked his skateboard up and caught it with his hands. The kid seems to be about 12, 1 year younger than Jeff. He was an Aeropostale shirt and ripped blue jeans. Well. It looks like we got some new meat. Suddenly 2 other kids appeared. One was super skinny and the other was huge. Well, since you're new here, I'd like to introduce ourselves. Over there's Keith. Jeff and Lou looked over to be the skinny kid. He had a dopey face I would expect a sidekick to have, and he's Troy. They look over that fat kid. Talk about a tub of lard. This kid looked like he had an exercise since he was crawling. Oh my god. And I said, the first kid, and Randy. Now, for all those kids in his neighborhood, there's a small price for bus fare. If you catch my drift, Lou stood up, ready to punch the lights out of the kid's eyes when one of his friends pulled a knife on him. Tisk, 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 tisk. I had hoped you would be more cooperative, but it seems we must do this the hard way. The kid walked up to Lou and took his wallet out of his pocket. Jeff got that feeling again. Now it was truly strong. A burning sensation. He stood up, but Lou gestured him to sit down. Jeff ignored him and walked up to the kid. You gotta be kidding. Oh. That scared me, dude. It was about to freeze. Listen here, you little punk. Give back my bro's wallet or else. Randy put the wallet in his pocket and pulled out his own knife. Oh, and what will you do? Just as he finished the sentence, Jeff propped the kid in his nose. As Randy reached for his face, Jeff grabbed the kid's wrist and broke it. Randy screamed and Jeff grabbed the knife from his hands. Troy and Keith rushed Jeff, but Jeff was too quick. He threw Randy to the ground. Keith lashed out at him, but Jeff dunked and stabbed him in the arm. Keith dropped his knife and fell to the ground, screaming. Troy rushed him too, but Jeff didn't even need the knife. He just punched Troy straight in the stomach, and Troy went down. As he fell, he punked all over. Lou could do nothing but look in amazement at Jeff. Jeff, how'd you... That was all he said. They saw the bus coming and knew they'd be blamed for the whole thing, so they started running as fast as they could. As they ran, they looked back and saw the bus driver rushing over to Randy and the others. As Jeff and Lou made it to school, they didn't dare tell what happened. All they did was sit and listen. Lou just thought as his brother beating up a few kids, but Jeff knew it was more. It was something scary. As he got the feeling, he felt as powerful it was. The urge to just hurt someone. He didn't like how it sounded, but he couldn't help feeling happy. He felt that strange feeling go away and stay away for the entire day of school. Even as he walked home, due to the whole thing near the bus stop, and knew how he probably wouldn't be taking the bus anymore. He felt happy. When he got home, his parents asked him how his day was, and he said in a somewhat ominous voice, "It was a wonderful day." Next morning, he heard a knock at the door. He walked down to find 2 police officers at the door, his mother looking back at him with an angry look. "Jeff, these officers tell me that you attacked 3 kids. That wasn't regular fighting, and they were stabbed." "Stabbed, son?" Jeff's gaze fell to the floor, showing his mother that it was true. "Mom, they were the ones who pulled the knives on me and Lou," son said one of the cops. "We found 3 kids. 2 stabbed, 1 hanging with a bruise on his stomach, and we have witnesses proving that you fled the scene. Now, what does that tell us?" Jeff knew it was no use. He could say him and Lou had been attacked, but there was no proof of it. It was not them who attacked first. He couldn't say that they weren't fleeing, because, truth be told, they were, so Jeff could defend himself or Lou. Couldn't. "Son, call your brother down." Jeff couldn't do it, since it was him who beat up all the kids. "Sir, it was me. I was one who beat up the kids." Lou tried to hold me back, but he couldn't stop me. The cop looked at his partner, and they both nodded. "Well, kids, looks like a year in juvie." "Wait," said Lou. They all looked up to see him holding a knife. The officers pulled their guns and locked them on Lou. "It was me. I beat up those little punks. I have the marks to prove it." He lifted up his sleeves to reveal cuts and bruises, as if he was in a struggle. "Son, just put the knife down," said the officer. Lou held the knife and dropped it to the ground. He put his hands up and walked over to the cops. "No, Lou, it was me. I did it." Jeff had tears running down his face. "Oh, poor bro. Trying to take the blame for what I did. Well, take me away." Police led Lou out to the patrol car. Lou, tell them it was me. Tell them. I was the one who beat up those kids. Jeff's mother put her hands on his shoulders. Jeff, please, you don't have to lie. We know it's Lou. You can't stop. Jeff watched helplessly as the cop speeds off with Lou inside. A few minutes later, Jeff's dad pulled into the driveway, seeing Jeff's face and knowing something was wrong. Son, what is it? Jeff couldn't answer. His vocal cords were strained from crying. Instead, Jeff's mother walked his father inside to break the bad news of him as Jeff wept in the driveway. After an hour or so, Jeff walked back into the house, seeing that his parents were both shocked, sad, and disappointed. He couldn't look at them. He couldn't see how they thought of Lou when it was his fault. He just went to sleep, trying to get the whole thing off his mind. 2 days went by with no word from Lou at JDC, no friends to hang out with, nothing but sadness and guilt. This is until Saturday, when Jeff woke up by his mother with a happy, sunshiny face. Jeff, it's today, he said, as she opened up the curtains and let light flood into his room. What's that? What's today? He asked Jeff as he stares awake. Why, it's Billy's party. He was now fully awake. Mom, you're joking, right? You don't expect me to go to some kid's party after there was a long pause. Jeff, we both know what happened. I think this party could be the thing that brightens up the past days. Now get dressed. Jeff's mother walked out of the room and downstairs to get ready herself. He fought himself to get up. He picked out a random shirt and a pair of jeans and walked downstairs. He saw his mother and father all dressed up. His mother in a dress and his father in a suit. He thought what they would ever wear such fancy clothes to a kid's party. Son, is that all you're going to wear? Said Jeff's mom. Better than wearing too much, he said. His mother pushed down the feeling to yell at him and hit it with a smile. Now, Jeff, you may be overdressed, but this is how you go if you want to make an impression, said his father. Jeff grunted and went back to his room. Oh my gosh. Anyway. I don't have any fancy clothes, he yelled downstairs. Just pick out something, called his mother. He looked around in his closet for what he called fancy. He found a pair of black dress pants, and he had for special occasions, and an undershirt. He couldn't find a shirt to go with it, though. He looked around and found only striped and patterned shirts. None of which go with dress pants. Finally, he found a white hoodie and put it on. You wearing that? They both said. His mother looked at her watch. Oh no, time to change. Let's just go. Oh no, time to change. Let's go. She said as she heard Jeff and his father out the door. They crossed the street over to Barbara and Billy's house. They knocked on the door, and it appeared that Barbara, just like his parents, were overdressed as they walked inside. All Jeff could see were adults, no kids. The kids are out in the yard, Jeff. How about you go and meet some of them, said Barbara. Just walk outside to a yard full of kids. Jeff walked outside to a yard full of kids. They were running around in weird cowboy costumes and shooting each other with plastic guns. He might as well be standing in a Toys R Us. Suddenly, a kid came up to him and handed him a toy gun and hat. Hey, wanna play? Wanna play? He said. No, kid, I'm way too old for this stuff. The kid looked at him with that weird puppy dog face. Please, said the kid. Fine, said Jeff. He put on the hat and started to pretend shoot at the kids. At first, he thought it was totally ridiculous. Then he started to actually have fun. It might not have been super cool, but it was the first time he had done something that took his mind off of Lou. So he played with the kids for a while until he heard a noise, a weird rolling noise. Then it hit him. Randy, Troy, and Keith all jumped over the fence on their skateboards. Jeff dropped the fake gun and ripped off the hat. Randy looked at him with burning hatred. Hello, Jeff, it is, he said. We have some unfinished business. Jeff saw his bruised nose. I think we're even. I beat the crap out of you. You got me, brother. You got my brother sent to jail. Randy got an angry look in his eyes. "Oh no, I don't go for even. I go for winning. You may have kicked our nooses that one day, but not today." As he said that, Randy rushed out at Jeff. They both fell to the ground. Randy punched Jeff in the nose, and Jeff grabbed him by the ears, and he butted him. Jeff pushed Randy off of him, and both rose to their feet. Kids were screaming and parents were running out of the houses. Troy and Keith both pulled guns out of their pockets. No one interrupts or guts with fly, they said. Randy pulled a knife on Jeff and stabbed it into his shoulders. How much is left? I'm gonna stop there for today. I will resume that some other time. But I'm getting a little tired, and I was sick today. That's why I wasn't at school, and I don't feel good, so hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you in my next video.